When you step back from the constant noise of the world, when you deliberately remove yourself from the chatter, the comparisons, and the endless commentary, something remarkable begins to happen. You're left alone with yourself, and for many people that's terrifying, because in the silence you come face to face with the truth of who you are. You see the habits you've built, the compromises you've made, the potential you've neglected. But you also see the seeds of strength you've ignored, the discipline you could sharpen, the dreams you've pushed aside. That process, painful, uncomfortable, and deeply necessary, is the power of self-reflection. Most people run from it. They fill every quiet moment with noise, music, conversations, notifications, anything to avoid silence. Why? Because silence reveals. It reveals where you are falling short. It exposes the gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. And unless you have the courage to look at yourself honestly, you will spend your life avoiding responsibility for your own condition. But here's the paradox. It is only when you sit still, when you choose to listen to yourself without excuses, that transformation begins. Think about it. If you don't know where you are, how can you possibly know where to go? Self-reflection is the map. It shows you your current position, your flaws and your strengths, so that you can chart a direction worth pursuing. And this is not about self-loathing. It's not about sitting in silence and tearing yourself apart. It's about clarity. It's about facing the reality of your situation without denial. When you reflect, you're not saying, "I'm worthless." You're saying, "I could be more." That shift in perspective, from shame to responsibility, is the key difference between stagnation and growth. Silence amplifies this process. Because when you stop speaking, when you stop broadcasting, you can finally listen. To your thoughts, to your conscience, to the part of you that knows what you should be doing, but that you've been too busy to hear. There's a reason the wisest people across history valued solitude. It's not because they hated people. It's because they understood that if you don't master yourself, no amount of external validation or noise will save you. Self-reflection in silence is like cleaning out a cluttered room. At first it looks overwhelming. You don't want to face the mess. But once you begin sorting through it, removing what's broken, reorganizing what matters, you create order. And with order comes strength, clarity, and purpose. That inner order translates outward into everything you do. You speak with more weight because your words come from a place of integrity. You act with more confidence because your actions are aligned with your values. And here's something crucial. When you focus on yourself in silence, you stop competing with the wrong people. You realize that comparing yourself to others is a distraction. The only meaningful comparison is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. That's the reflection that counts. That's the reflection that builds a future worth living. It's not easy. Sometimes you'll sit in silence and all you'll hear is regret. All you'll feel is the weight of wasted time. But even that is a gift, because regret is a signal. It's a reminder that life is finite and that the time to act is now, not later. Reflection, when taken seriously, transforms regret into fuel, so let the silence do its work. Sit with yourself long enough to hear what you've been avoiding, and then take responsibility for what you find, because the greatest tragedy is not discovering that you're flawed. The greatest tragedy is never pausing long enough to realize you could be more. And in that realization lies your strength. Because once you see yourself clearly, once you dare to face who you are in the silence, you unlock the power to become who you are meant to be. We live in a culture that seems to reward noise. People shout over one another, competing to be the loudest voice in the room, mistaking volume for authority. We're told to constantly speak up, to make sure our opinions are heard, as if silence is somehow a sign of weakness, of passivity, of not knowing what to say. But the truth is often the opposite. Silence, deliberate, controlled silence, is not weakness, it is strength. It is discipline, it is mastery of yourself. When you choose silence, you're not saying you have nothing to offer. You're saying, I don't need to prove myself with words, and that unsettles people. They expect you to respond, to defend yourself, to explain. But the moment you refuse to be pulled into that endless cycle of justification, you demonstrate something rare: composure. Think about how easy it is to react. Someone criticizes you and your instinct is to fire back. Someone questions you and you scramble to explain. That's the default. That's what everyone does. But when you resist that impulse, when you remain quiet instead of reacting emotionally, you reveal a different kind of power. You show that you're not controlled by others. You're not tossed around by every comment, every opinion, every provocation. You are steady, and steadiness commands respect. The strongest individuals are often the ones who don't speak right away. They listen, they observe, they weigh their words carefully, and when they finally decide to speak, people pay attention because they know those words weren't wasted. Silence sharpens the value of what you eventually say. A single sentence, spoken after long consideration, carries more force than 100 sentences spilled out in haste. This is why silence is not cowardice. It's restraint, and restraint is one of the highest forms of strength. Anyone can talk endlessly, anyone can argue, but not everyone can hold back. Not everyone can sit with their thoughts, their emotions, and choose to remain still. That takes training, that takes courage, and silence isn't only about conflict, it's also about focus. When you stay quiet, you conserve energy. You stop scattering yourself across meaningless conversations and debates. You stop handing pieces of yourself to anyone who demands your attention. Instead, you redirect that energy inward into building something real. And people notice. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. They feel that you're not desperate for approval, not eager to impress, not frantically trying to fill every gap with noise. You're grounded. There's another layer to this. Silence disrupts patterns. When someone expects a fight and you give them none, they lose control. When someone throws bait at you and you refuse to bite, you hold the upper hand. Silence unsettles those who thrive on chaos because it denies them what they want most: your reaction. In that moment, your restraint becomes your weapon. But perhaps the greatest gift of silence is that it gives you space to act rather than argue. You don't need to explain your plans to everyone. You don't need to announce every goal. You don't need to convince anyone that you're serious. Just do the work. Let your results speak for you, because in the end, actions cut through noise, and silence, paired with consistent action, becomes undeniable. So when you feel the urge to defend yourself, when you feel the pull to jump into every discussion, pause. Ask yourself, do I need to speak right now, or is my silence stronger? More often than not, your silence will carry more weight than your word. The person who can remain quiet in a world addicted to noise is not weak. They are not passive. They are powerful beyond measure. Because silence, when chosen deliberately, is not the absence of strength. It is the highest expression of it. One of the most valuable resources you have in life is not money, it's not status, it's not even time, although time is precious. It's your energy. Your energy is the fuel that drives everything you do. It's the capacity to focus, to build, to endure, to create. And yet, most people treat their energy as if it's infinite. They waste it on arguments that don't matter, on people who don't care, on distractions that lead nowhere. They hand it out freely to anyone who demands a reaction, as if it costs them nothing, but it costs them everything. Think about the last time you got dragged into a pointless argument. Maybe it was online, maybe it was at work. Maybe it was with a friend or family member. How did you feel afterwards? Drained. Not because the issue itself was important, but because you poured your energy into something that produced nothing of value. That's the trap. The world is full of distractions designed to drain you: debates, gossip, endless scrolling, the constant need to respond. And the more you give in to them, the less energy you have for the work that actually matters. Guarding your energy begins with silence. When you stay quiet, you stop feeding every situation with your attention. You learn to let go of the impulse to explain yourself, to argue, to prove. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every invitation to conflict deserves acceptance. The moment you recognize that, you start taking your power back. Because your energy is no longer at the mercy of other people's agendas. It's reserved for you. This is not about isolation. It's about discernment. It's about asking yourself, is this worth my energy? Will this conversation, this battle, this distraction bring me closer to who I want to become? If the answer is no, then silence is the right response. Walk away, not out of fear, but out of strength. Because you know your energy is better invested elsewhere. There's also a deeper truth here. When you guard your energy, you create space for growth. You suddenly have more fuel to build discipline, to pursue your goals, to take care of your health, to strengthen your relationships. Energy that was once wasted on noise gets redirected into action, and the results compound over time. The progress that once felt impossible begins to accelerate, not because the path became easier, but because you finally stopped pouring yourself into things that never mattered in the first place. And people will notice. They'll notice that you no longer react the way you used to. They'll notice that you don't get pulled into every conflict, that you're not constantly explaining or defending yourself. They'll sense a shift, and it will unsettle them, because most people are addicted to reaction. Most people are addicted to draining their energy on things that don't serve them. When you break that pattern, you set yourself apart. You demonstrate a kind of control that few possess. Guarding your energy also teaches you patience. When you stop scattering your focus, you become willing to play the long game. You realize that not every battle needs to be fought today. Not every insult needs an immediate reply. Some things resolve themselves when you simply refuse to feed them, and in the meantime you're moving forward while others are standing still. So guard your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Don't hand it out cheaply. Don't let it be stolen by noise, by drama, by distractions. Save it, invest it, direct it toward the battles that matter and the goals that are worthy of you. Because when your energy is guarded, your progress becomes unstoppable. And remember this: the person who masters their energy masters their life. There comes a point when words are no longer enough. You can talk about your goals, you can announce your dreams, you can promise that you'll change, but if nothing follows, those words collapse into emptiness. People become numb to talk because everyone talks. Everyone claims they're going to improve, that they'll work harder, that they'll break old habits. But few follow through, and that's why in the end actions carry more weight than any declaration ever could. When you focus on action instead of explanation, you shift the balance of power. You're no longer trying to convince others of your seriousness. You're proving it in real time. Think about it. When someone tells you what they're going to do, you might nod politely. But when they actually do it, when you see consistent results, you don't need persuasion. You're convinced. Actions bypass argument. They silence doubt. They speak in a language stronger than words, the language of proof. And this applies to your own relationship with yourself as well. How many times have you told yourself, "Tomorrow I'll start," only to let yourself down? Every time you speak without action, you weaken your trust in yourself. You reinforce the idea that your own words are unreliable. But when you act even in small, consistent ways, you rebuild that trust. You begin to believe yourself again. You realize that your actions can transform your reality, and suddenly you don't need to talk as much about what you're going to do. You're too busy doing it. There's a kind of dignity in quiet action. You wake up earlier. You put in the work when no one is watching. You make sacrifices without broadcasting them. You choose progress over performance. And then one day, without fanfare, people start to notice. They see the changes. They see the results. And those results say more about your character than any speech you could give. The truth is, people respect what they can see. They don't respect endless explanations. You don't gain credibility by announcing that you're disciplined. You gain credibility by living in a disciplined way. You don't gain admiration by saying you're committed. You earn it by refusing to quit when things get hard. Your actions create a track record, and that track record speaks for you in rooms you'll never enter. It speaks long after the words have faded, and actions are resilient in a way words are not. Words can be twisted, ignored, forgotten. Actions endure. You cannot fake them indefinitely. Either you did the work or you didn't. Either you followed through or you didn't. There's no hiding behind excuses, and that honesty, that clarity, is what makes action such a powerful language. But here's the catch. Action demands silence. The more you talk, the less energy you leave for doing. Talking can become a substitute for progress, a way to feel good about yourself without actually moving forward. That's why it's often wiser to remain quiet. Do the work in silence, build in silence, achieve in silence, and let the results echo for you. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember the promises you made. They remember what you delivered. They don't remember the speeches you gave about change. They remember the change itself. So let your actions carry the weight. Let them be the proof of your character, the evidence of your discipline, the reflection of your focus. And when the time comes when people wonder what you stand for, they won't need to ask, they'll already know. Because in a world full of noise, nothing speaks louder than the life you live. One of the biggest traps we fall into is comparison. We look around at what everyone else is doing, how much money they're making, how fast they're progressing, how much attention they're receiving, and we measure ourselves against them. But here's the problem. Their path is not your path. Their circumstances, their background, their strengths and weaknesses, none of that matches yours. So when you compare yourself to them, you're playing a game you can never win. And every moment you waste doing that is a moment you've stolen from yourself, a moment you could have invested in your own growth. The truth is, the only meaningful comparison is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. That's where real progress lies. When you focus on yourself, you free yourself from the endless treadmill of competing with everyone else's highlight reel. Instead, you start asking the only question that matters. Am I better today than I was yesterday? That shift is powerful. It brings growth into your control, because growth is no longer dependent on where others stand. It's dependent only on your effort. And this requires focus, real, deliberate focus, not the scattered attention of someone who's trying to keep up with everyone else, but the disciplined attention of someone who has decided to build something meaningful within themselves. That's not easy. It's much easier to distract yourself with comparison, because comparison gives you an excuse. You can say, well, they had better opportunities, they had more advantages, they had a head start. And maybe all of that is true. But none of it changes the responsibility you have for your own progress. The only way forward is to direct your focus inward, to put your energy into becoming the best possible version of yourself. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. Growth stops feeling like a distant dream, and it becomes a daily reality. You realize that progress is not about giant leaps. It's about steady, incremental steps. It's about showing up every day with the determination to move just a little closer to who you want to be. That's the discipline of focus. You chip away at your weaknesses, you sharpen your strengths, and over time, the compound effect of those small improvements becomes undeniable. And here's what makes it even more powerful. Focusing on yourself doesn't just transform you, it transforms how others see you. People start to notice that you're not distracted by petty drama, that you're not wasting time trying to outshine everyone else. They see that you're moving steadily in your own direction, and ironically, by refusing to compete with others, you end up surpassing many of them. Because while they're busy comparing, you're busy building. But this path demands patience. Growth is not instant. It's slow, often invisible in the beginning, and that's where most people give up. They want results now. They want recognition now. But when you stay focused, when you keep investing in yourself despite the lack of immediate reward, you develop resilience. And resilience is the bedrock of transformation. It ensures that even when progress feels invisible, it is still happening beneath the surface. So block out the noise. Stop chasing validation. Stop measuring your worth against the achievements of others. Focus on your journey, your discipline, your growth. Because the truth is, no one else can live your life for you. No one else can carry the weight of your potential. That responsibility belongs to you alone. And if you embrace it fully, if you dedicate yourself to the daily practice of personal focus, you will grow into someone you can respect. Someone whose life is not defined by comparison, but by authentic progress. And that kind of growth, steady, disciplined, and entirely your own, is the foundation of a life worth living. Respect is not something you can demand. It's not something you can buy, and it's certainly not something you can talk your way into. Respect is earned, and it's earned slowly. People watch you, they listen to you, they study how you carry yourself, how you respond under pressure, how you live when no one is applauding. Over time, those patterns form a picture, and in that picture, they either find a person worth respecting, or they don't. This is where silence becomes essential. Because when you speak too much, when you try constantly to explain yourself, defend yourself, or prove yourself, you dilute your presence. People stop listening, not because what you're saying is wrong, but because it's excessive. On the other hand, when you practice silence, when you speak less and act more, your words carry more weight. People lean in, they listen, because they know you don't speak unless it matters. Silence amplifies the value of your voice. Think of the people you respect most in life. Chances are, they aren't the ones who talk endlessly. They aren't the ones who try to dominate every conversation. They're the ones who listen. They're the ones who observe. And when they finally do speak, what they say has impact. That's not an accident. That's the product of restraint. It's the product of valuing silence enough to let words mean something when they are finally spoken. There's also another layer to this. Silence demonstrates confidence. If you can sit quietly while others rush to prove themselves, you reveal that you're not desperate for approval. You don't need to fill the space with noise to feel secure. You're grounded enough to let your presence speak for itself. And people respect that. They respect the composure it takes to remain quiet in a culture addicted to talking. Silence also protects your dignity. Arguments, gossip, petty disputes, these things erode respect. When you're constantly pulled into the noise, you appear reactive, distracted, and unsteady. But when you refuse to engage in every conflict, when you hold your tongue and choose stillness instead of escalation, you show maturity. You show that your character is not for sale to every passing distraction. That quiet dignity builds respect in ways no argument ever could. But perhaps the deepest reason silence builds respect is because it allows your actions to do the talking. Words are fleeting, they come and go, but actions create evidence. When people see consistency, discipline, and integrity over time, they don't need long explanations. They already know who you are. They respect you because your life has spoken louder than any speech could. And this isn't just about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. When you live in such a way that silence feels natural, when you no longer need to broadcast your worth, you begin to respect yourself. And that self-respect is the foundation of every other kind of respect. Without it, external respect is meaningless, because you'll always doubt it. With it, external respect becomes inevitable, because people recognize in you the rare strength of someone who doesn't need to be loud to be heard. So let your silence carry weight. Let it sharpen your words, protect your dignity, and magnify your actions. Don't waste energy trying to force respect through argument or explanation. Live in a way that commands it. Build the kind of presence that speaks even in quiet, because in the end, respect is not granted to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one whose silence speaks volumes. So in the end, it all comes down to this. Life is short, and the time you waste chasing noise, chasing comparisons, chasing validation, it doesn't come back. The world will always try to pull you into arguments, distractions, and endless chatter. But if you can resist that, if you can hold your silence and focus on yourself, you create something rare, clarity. You begin to see who you are and who you could become. You conserve your energy for the battles that matter. You let your actions do the speaking. You dedicate yourself to growth that is steady, personal, and real. And in that quiet dedication, respect follows not because you asked for it, but because you earned it. This path is not easy. Silence is uncomfortable. Focus requires discipline. Guarding your energy demands sacrifice. But the alternative, living scattered, reactive, desperate for approval, is far worse. It leaves you weak, exhausted, and unfulfilled. Choosing silence, choosing focus, choosing to build yourself from the inside out. That leads to strength, to dignity, to a life of weight and substance. So let others chase noise, let others fight battles that don't matter. You don't need to. You know where your attention belongs. You know that your energy, your growth, your actions, and your silence are building something far more valuable than approval. They're building character. And character is the foundation of a life worth living. Focus on yourself. Stay silent. And let the life you build speak for you.